Even though this game went as I expected, uh, Utah State looked pretty good at moments. Definitely in the first half, stood in there. But Vanderbilt's a second half team, and they really put it on you, and they've been doing it against teams all season long. Vanderbilt outscores Utah State 24-14 in the second half to really put it away. Final score 55-35. Vanderbilt over Utah State. Despite the loss, Bryson Barnes looked really good. He's their go-to guy. We knew Diego Pavia was, if you're going to win, you're going to have to stop Diego Pavia, and they really couldn't. Uh, he's a football player. Uh, he's a playmaker. It seems like he makes all the right decisions. He finishes this game with 321 yards passing, 5 touchdowns, another 79 yards rushing, and another rushing touchdown. I mean, he was certainly MVP of the day. Put on a show. Kudos to the Aggies for being able to put some points on the board and really score on a tough defense like Vanderbilt. Certainly, if you're a fan of scoring, this is the game for you. Only one field goal, a couple of punts, but you know, constant scoring. 6 points going in the end zone. But this game, Utah State goes on 3-2, but now they're completely focused on conference play. Already got a good win against Air Force. Uh, Vanderbilt goes on 5-0, 3-0 at home. They could surprise a lot of people in the SEC, which at this point it really shouldn't even be a surprise because they're just a good team, well coached, a bunch of playmakers, arguably, top three best QBs in the SEC with Pavia. Tons of points on the board in this game. Vanderbilt, pulls away, still undefeated at home. 55, Utah State 35 is your final score. Are we ever really going to know what, San Diego State's thinking going into any given week? San Diego State pulls out a win on the road against Northern Illinois. Final score 6-3. That's right, 6-3. Talk about a lack of offense. This was a punting game for sure. 13 punts in this game, including 3 turnovers, 2 turnovers by San Diego State. Danical had 2 picks in this game. A defensive game for sure. There's probably only about six or seven drives for either team that went beyond 4 or 5 plays. Three and out. Turnover here and there, and still not being able to capitalize on those turnovers. You would have thought this game was played in a frozen tundra type game, and it was bright and sunny, ideal weather conditions. 9 points between two teams throughout the game. Surprisingly enough, San Diego State finds a way to cover 2.5 points. San Diego State's one of those teams you really just don't know what you're gonna get out of them. They find ways to win. They're 3-1 on the season. Northern Illinois moves to 1-3. Non-conference game you sort of make your way out of. Now you look forward to what you can do in the conference. I think there's plenty of question marks for the Aztecs right now, but it's just consistency. You'd like for them to be a team that's consistent throughout. You can put up 2 shutout games, one against FCS school, but another one against Cal, and then you come back the next week and it's a 6-3 win over Northern Illinois on the road. It's a head scratcher, but 3-1 on the season. This is a game you probably just want to move on from, forget about, and look forward to the weeks to come as you begin conference play. Your final score: San Diego State 6, Northern Illinois 3. We knew it'd be a tightly contested game. This is a rivalry game. It's a sellout crowd for the first time in almost 2 decades. New Mexico finds a way to get it done, 38-20 over New Mexico State. Through the first 3 quarters, this was a tightly contested game. It felt like momentum was going back and forth. Lobos pulled away in the fourth quarter, but kudos to for the Aggies for keeping it competitive, mostly throughout. Had the Lobos on their heels a little bit in the start. A couple mistakes from New Mexico. They realized in the first half that they weren't going to be able to run the ball they wanted to. Came back in the second half with a completely different game plan. Start airing it out. Jack Lane finished with 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Great game from him. Scottre Humphrey and Bankston, McKinney, they weren't able to run the ball the way they wanted to. Had a couple crucial runs to extend the drive, but when in doubt, they came up big in the passing game. Keegan Johnson put up 117 yards receiving, a touchdown. John Miller had 80 yards and a touchdown, and Scottre Humphrey came through with a big reception for a score. To really put the Lobos well ahead. Defensively, New Mexico State did a great job. Had a scoop and score early on to go up 10 points on the Lobos. Even going into halftime, up 17-14. New Mexico State, well within themselves. The third quarter, that the Lobos decided that the running game wasn't going to work, and they started passing, and they couldn't be stopped. Lobos score touchdowns on their last 3 possessions, pull away, 18-point victory. It was a much closer game than it had to be. A fumble for return for a scoop and score. Incredibly badly timed, muffed punt gave the Aggies position and great field position, but just a couple mistakes on Lobo's part that definitely made the game closer for the first 2-3 quarters. Second half they tightened it up, got more discipline, found a way to get the ball to the guys, the playmakers. As far as the crowd, it was an insane crowd, 37,000 plus, sold out event. First time in 20 years almost, since 2007. Huge celebrities. They had IShow Speed, they had John Jones, they had Holly Holm, just local NM star power. Great atmosphere. I think through the first half there was probably maybe 10,000 people still trying to get into the stadium. Just that's how crowded it was, and no one was expecting quite that atmosphere. A great, well-deserved win for the Lobos against their in-state rival at home in front of a sold-out crowd with a lot of star power, a lot of celebrity faces. Lobos moved to 3-1 in the season, 2-0 at home as they begin conference play next weekend. Confidence is high, morale is high for the Lobos right now, as it should be. It's going to get really interesting as they start to take on some serious talent in the Mountain West. As for the Aggies, they're 2-2 on the season, 0-2 on the road. I think they're going to be decent once they start Conference USA play. They're a team that they're scrappy, definitely limited in some skilled positions, but they're scrappy. I think their defense plays good enough football at times, and I think their passing game, works on most teams, not the Lobos. They have their moments. 38-20 is your final score. New Mexico over New Mexico State. I feel like I went against my gut a little bit on this one. I've been high on Hawaii, all season long, and I feel like if they could get back to playing the way they were the first couple of weeks, that they would have a good day. And sure enough, Hawaii gets a win over Air Force on the road, 44-35. The Rainbow Warriors took an early lead and held on to it throughout. There wasn't a game of too many turnovers, too many mistakes, similar to that Utah State Vanderbilt game. Just a lot of scoring, matching score for score throughout. I think Air Force is a good football team, but when they get down on some of these explosive offenses like a Boise State or even a Hawaii, they find themselves, it's difficult to come back from a 10-point lead once they get down. Mike Alejado back fully healthy, had a great day. 457 yards through the air, 3 touchdowns. Landon Sims had 57 yards and a touchdown himself. Liam Sarka, another great passing outing, 278 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did have a pick. He put on 139 yards running the ball as well. I'm curious to see what both these teams will look like taking on some more defensive-minded teams like a Wyoming or a San Diego State, a UNLV. How will they match up against some of those quality defenses in the Mountain West? Air Force goes down to 1-3 on the season, 0-3 in Mountain West play. That's rough. Meanwhile, Hawaii, 4-2 on the season, 1-1 in conference play. Hawaii's definitely trending upward with good enough defense and definitely a solid offensive game that could put up a lot of points. It feels like for both these teams that their conference standing starting to form into place. You're seeing maybe how far a team like Hawaii may be able to go, and a team that Air Force that's looking for any possible win to hold the losing streak. 44-35 is your final score. Hawaii over Air Force. If Colorado State fans weren't worried going into this game, they're definitely worried now. 20-3 is your final score. Washington State over Colorado State. The Rams go 1-3 on the season now. Washington State's 3-2. In particular, Colorado State's 1-2 at home. Jackson Broussard gets the start. 19 for 28, 188 yards. No passing touchdowns. It was a 3-point game. Zevi Eckhouse gets the start for the Cougars. He goes 189 yards, 2 touchdowns. Talk about a game that was finished after the first quarter because they would only be able to put up a field goal. Despite the Rams getting on the board first, they would not score again. Pair of missed field goals, a fumble, and a loss on downs. They could not get anything done offensively. Looking at the performance they put on, it almost seems foolish that they were 5.5 point favorites going into this game at home. Real disappointing game for the Rams, which has been building up the past couple of weeks. Missed 2-point possession to lose last weekend, the week before that. Game that in the eyes of many people that they had lost had they not overturned that touchdown reception for Northern Colorado. Did not stay competitive for the most part against Washington, and now they're grasping at straws. Only real reprieve is that they have questionable yet 3-1 team in San Diego State next weekend, but that game's anyone's guess as to how it turns out. But from what we've seen from Colorado State, not only can they not stop opposing offenses, they can't really score themselves. You add kicking troubles to already spotty offense, and you got the makings of a disaster. Jay Norvell's gonna have to go back and reassess how they play winning football again. Washington State 20, Colorado State 3 is your final score there. This is absolutely the heartbreaker of the weekend. San Jose State was in apparently complete control through the final minutes. In the final few minutes, they give this one up. Stanford wins this 130, San Jose State 29. The Spartans go into the halftime 2014 lead over Stanford. Both teams go scoreless in the third, and in the fourth quarter, the Cardinals find a way to get a comeback. In the most ironic twist, I came in this game talking about how both teams were doing horrible passing the ball. Both quarterbacks were suspect, and both quarterbacks end up putting up 450 plus yards apiece. Walker Egan put up 58 attempts. He had 473 yards and 3 touchdowns in this game. Egan was also the leading rusher at 19 yards. Meanwhile, Ben Gulbranson, 444 yards and 2 touchdowns. Crucial minutes to secure a win for the Cardinals. A pair of missed field goals by the Spartans would prove crucial as they lose this game by 1 point. You have to give Gulbranson credit for engineering a fourth quarter comeback, go 80 yards down the field, and really line up that rushing score for the Cardinals to win this game. Crazy to think that a 6-point score to start the fourth quarter would come back to haunt them. 1-point loss. We're talking about 900 yards of passing combined for both teams. And on the flip side, less than 100 yards from from both teams combined. I did not see that one coming, and perhaps the difference was Stanford able to capitalize on a pair of fourth downs that became crucial. It's an ugly, demoralizing defeat for San Jose State. Meanwhile, Stanford moves on 2-0 at home. For both teams, at least at the moment, it feels kind of bleak as they start conference play. I don't know if you would rely on either one of them. Certainly for San Jose State, who is, likely in a lot of people's books favored in their 3 of the first 4 matchups. They go 1-3 on the season, and now you got some tough teams coming up, especially come back at home, and you got New Mexico, who's playing their best football. It's gonna be interesting to see how the Spartans do from here. 30-29 is your final score. Stanford over San Jose State. Was there any doubt? Boise State 47, App State 14. Boise State from the start to finish was in complete control. They're playing their best football right now. The game that's probably over at halftime, 24-7. Maddox and Matson playing incredibly well. They can run the ball effectively when they want. Defensively, defensively solid team in this past couple of weeks. 4 turnovers for this Broncos defense, 3 picks, 2 of those picks being pick sixes. Dominant performance for Boise State. This was the perfect tune-up game as they go on to South Bend next week. They look about as dangerous as they can be for a team taking on Notre Dame at home. Does that mean Notre Dame's on upset alert? Possibly. I think they're going to give the Fighting Irish their best effort, and I would not be surprised to see a closer matchup than a lot of people are probably expecting, especially after what Notre Dame did this past weekend. Maddox Matson puts up 321 yards, 4 touchdowns. Sire Gaines 69 yards. Malik Sherrod 49 yards. Defensively, put on a show. Boyan Phillips and Marion McCoy, getting pick sixes, just putting on a highlight reel. The Broncos go on 3-1 on the season, 2-0 at home. Meanwhile, App State now 2-2 on the season, 0-2 on the road. I don't think this is really indicative of how App State's going to perform the rest of the way. I think they'll do pretty good in the Sun Belt. Broncos are, playing their best football. Maybe it's early to say, but was that loss, that demoralizing loss, pretty bad loss to South Florida to open their season, was that their best thing for the Broncos? It's looking like it certainly has affected their play the past 3 games for them. 47-14 is your final score. Boise State over App State.